Welcome back to another episode of the Prometheus podcast where we're bringing fire back to the people. Luke here and I'm joined with Hendry and Ali. How are you gents going today?
Going pretty good. Feeling pretty tired again as per usual.
No sleep, no sleep. Sleep for the wicked, mate?
No sleep though.
How about yourself, Ali?
I went rock climbing the other day. Yeah, you wouldn't believe how much of a full body workout that is. Like from head to toe, I'm just in pain right now. But it's probably a good sign.
Yeah.
Boys bulking up from the...
That's it, from the climb.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time rock climbing at all?
I've been rock climbing before, but this was bouldering. So bouldering's basically, it's like rock climbing, but no like safety harness. And it doesn't go as high. So if you fall, you're not dead, but...
You like snap your neck or something.
Yeah, like it definitely motivates you to not fall.
Yeah,
So you try pretty hard, but yeah, afterwards, like the day after I woke up in the morning and I was just,
You're just like, I'll just lay in bed the rest of the day.
a world of hurt, but
that's alright.
yeah, it's good. I like it.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Have you
good.
been, man?
Yeah, alright. It was first week back at work. Last week or this week. So that was tough, I reckon. I've been all over the last couple of days, and the work as well is pretty difficult. So
Pretty physical.
yeah. So yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. Plenty of sleepless nights, like yourself. So I'm hoping to win some of that time back and rest up a bit. But
For sure.
we should be alright from there. Hendry, how did you put it? Do we know what date it is today? The date is probably what I want.
Today
It's
is
like
the
12th?
12th
Yeah, 12.
of January.
There's quite good timing. Do you remember what Hendry was talking about our last podcast? Talking about how you read something right, how people make their New Year's resolutions. And the study showed that by the 12th of Jan came around, most people didn't actually hold on to that resolution. I think that's pretty interesting, the fact that, well, the timing's perfect. So I was thinking about it this week. I just really want to get into, I guess, the mindset of that, but more the fact that, well, what are the consequences when people don't stick to those resolutions? Or what are the consequences when you say you're going to do something but you don't actually do it? Or what are the consequences of just flat out mediocre at the same time? Because I think there's a whole bunch of talking points, and I feel like people don't understand enough about the consequences. And you mentioned it off camera to me, Ali, once, about how some people just see the first tier of consequences, and you'll probably be able to give us a bit of a breakdown for it. But there's a whole, I guess, whiplash effect on all of our decisions, and people need to focus on the bigger impact or the multiple impacts, not just maybe what they see front on as well. So I think that's a pretty interesting topic point that we can dive into.
Yeah, for sure. So I think what you're referring to is, well, it's called orders of consequence, which is just a framework of understanding, what consequences follow certain actions or behaviors. So the way the human mind's kind of wired is it follows the causality of the actions you perform. So if you do action A, it results in result B. So let's take an example, or say if you don't like running and you're running for the first time. So the action is running, and then the result is, pain, misery, I hate this sucks.
Yeah.
And then that's like kind of, for a lot of people, that's just kind of case closed at that point. So if they're trying to make that New Year's resolution and they're saying, well, all right, a week in and this still just sucks. Like the result of my hard work is just pain. I don't like this. This isn't going to happen anymore. But that's a very narrow perspective, because you're just following that first initial outcome. So that initial outcome is usually the thing you feel strongest. But then if you move beyond that, what you notice is there's actually a multitude of consequences that follow any single action. And as you were saying, it has that ripple effect on your life. So say that first consequence is that, running just really sucks, I hate it. But then what's behind that? What is behind that huge wall of that first response? Well, behind that is, well, you're increasing your cardiovascular capability. Behind that is, well, you're more tired by the time you go to bed, so you get a better night's sleep. What's behind that? Well, since I'm getting a better night's sleep, I'm less stressed the next day, and I'm less of, you know, a pain for my wife or for my husband, you know. So there's a whole queue of effects that underlie any action. And that's just one example, but you could pick something that's, you know, perhaps a bad behavior where the initial outcome's good, you know. So eating pizza, you eat pizza, initial outcome's like, great, this tastes awesome. But then just in the same way with running, there's a whole line of outcomes behind that, which usually, you know, like that first reaction is almost the inverse of like what the behavior is. So like a bad behavior should have like a good initial outcome, and then good behaviors usually have like a bad initial outcome, because what's good for you isn't always what's, you know, enjoyable, and what's bad for you, for whatever cruel, you know, twist of fate, whoever made this universe, you know, just the bad stuff tends to appeal to us, you know. That's I guess an interesting perspective on it, in terms of understanding the broader context of our actions and how does consequences do play out in our lives.
Ooh, that is straight buzz.
That's deep.
No, I definitely, I do agree with like how you're saying that each thing that you do has like the initial, and it also has the further on outcome. And just like, I guess, another thing that you, like another example that you can use is what I tell everyone as well when they're like, because I do a lot of businesses and I, you know, try to help as many people as I can. Is that the problem I find with I don't know, like just society in general, just people in general, is that no one wants to stick it through long enough. Like people just want like a quick outcome, and if they don't get that quick outcome, they're like, oh well, I'll just go on to something else. No one wants to see things through. And you know, like I guess the consequence of that is that you could be one sale away from blowing up, one customer away, you know, like you could be, I don't know, a couple of days away from like success, but you just like gave up for it. Maybe even years, you know, who knows, but you didn't stick it through long enough to find out what it was. And the thing is, like, especially like with exercise or something, you're not going to see results straight away. Nothing comes straight away. I find that is good for you. You could be working days, you could be working weeks, months, years even, before you even see results. But yeah, like people just don't want to see things through. People just, well, like you'd exercise, let's say you exercise for 2 weeks, and then you're like, oh, I don't see any differences. Sure, like if you tell that to yourself, then yeah, you're demotivating yourself. You're putting yourself down, you know, which isn't good for you. But if you like go for 2 weeks and you're like, I haven't seen results yet, but I'm eating clean, I know eventually it'll come. Like if you do that, eventually, like maybe a couple more weeks down the track, months, you'll start getting that body that you want. You start getting fit. It's weird because there's so many like different ways you can talk about this topic, and I find that interesting about it.
Well, what you were saying about how people don't stick things through, that's a huge consequence, and it's the fact that bleeds into other things. So if a consequence is such as like the commitment, that actually committing to something to see it through, again, if you're always hitting that consequence, whereas you're just giving up, you're throwing in the towel too early, you're going to really struggle implementing that in other aspects, or all aspects. It doesn't just have to be at the gym, it doesn't have to be just eating healthy. So a real big consequence in throwing in the towel is, again, you're embodying that. You'll pass that on to other people. Maybe down the track when you would have kids as well, that mentality might be picked up. And again, if you can't commit to eating healthy or going to the gym or sticking to your New Year's resolution, who's to say that when you tell someone to trust you that you're going to keep your word? Or who's to say that you're going to be faithful to your girlfriend or your boyfriend? It's just that consequence that then again bleeds into other aspects and has that, what you said earlier, has the ripple effect, right?
Yeah, and it also just trains short-term thinking, which ultimately is destructive, because you don't live a short-term life, you live a long-term life. But if you're only ever thinking in 1 day span, 12-day span, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, or that's, you know, over the course of your life, you're not going to generate enough wealth, whether that's financial wealth or just other definitions of wealth, whether that's, you know, emotional security with the partner, or just happiness and well-being on your own terms in your own mind. If you're always thinking short term, then of course you're going to go for that quick hit, because you're going to go for that pizza because that's that quick hit. It gives you that initial strong outcome. But if you expand that to a longer term game, then when you're punching through that first wall, and then that's when the actual truth is. So obviously, if you're just looking at that first wall behind, eating out or getting burgers or, any fast food, that initial wall isn't the truth. It's just like that initial kind of hedonistic joy that comes with it. But only once you see past that first wall do you see the truth behind it or the other outcomes. And similarly, when you're having a healthy habit, that initial wall usually is quite unpleasant, but then behind it is all these flow-on effects that are quite positive in your life. So it's about, if all you're thinking is short term and all you're feeling is that first outcome, then of course over a lifetime you're not going to generate the sort of gains that you want compared to someone who is thinking for longer term vision, because then initial discomfort or that initial level of discipline that you need suddenly becomes contextualized, because you have perspective now, and perspective is what long-term thinking is. It's understanding the context of your current present moment and knowing that yes, this might be difficult or this might be unpleasant, but over time, and again it's coming back to what we actually spoke in the last podcast, and again this is linking to what you're saying, Henry, it's trusting in that process and not just focusing on the outcome itself, but knowing that if you give yourself into the process, the good outcomes that are behind that will slowly reveal themselves.
Yeah, looking past that first wall, you've just put it perfectly. And an example I know I definitely can think of with people our age is every single weekend they go out and they go partying, or they go to a club or they go to a bar. And again, they can't look past that first wall or even break through that first wall, that they, for whatever reason, have had a tough week at work, or they have a few issues or anything like that, and they want to go out, they want to just chill out and have a good time. And nothing's wrong with that. But having a good time, again, it's that negative and then you hit the positive. So they go out and they think they're having a good time and it's great, but have they potentially not dealt with something that's leading them to want to go out every single weekend and party?
Yeah.
And why are they so unhappy throughout the weekday that they need that Saturday night to go out and let loose, to then repeat the cycle? Saturday, spend a bunch of money, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And again, it's just not being able to see past that first wall and not consider the consequences down the track of wasting money every single night, of impacting that health. Because given it a year of not doing that, you could buy your own house, and maybe you're unhappy because you're still living at home. But again, they're just chasing that first reward or something to make, or something to ease that pain even, and they don't understand that consequences play a big part down the track. And we all need to understand those consequences as best as we can, because it's a long-term game that we're all in. It's not a short-term. You need to be able to stand up from your seat, look at the board as a whole, understand the pieces as best as you can, and move accordingly.
It's interesting that you bring up young people these days partying every week, and I find is that everyone likes that short-term kind of satisfaction. You go out, you drink, obviously you're having a good time, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. But the ripple effect that is, your body is isn't going to be as healthy because you're drinking alcohol, you're staying up really late, you're depriving yourself from sleep, you're spending money that you could spend on something else. Alcohol is actually expensive. It's crazy. Sometimes I go out and drink sometimes, and it's you spend $10 and you get a shot, or $10 and you get a really small glass of, I don't know, whatever you want to drink. And it's that adds up.
It does.
It's crazy. And like you said,
spending the next day hungover.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's huge. Yeah.
Doing things with that time either. If you're just spending that in bed, and of course you got to go for that greasy kebab to revive you. So that's time lost the next day as well. So it's not just that initial night; it's flow on to the next day, and then the the inefficiency of that day flows on to the week, and then you're starting the week off poorly, and then by the time you get to the end of the week, you're like, oh man, that was a bad week. Let's do it again. Like,
Exactly right. And that's already 4 consequences past the initial, it feels good, I need to relax, I need to let loose, I need to just have a good time. And straight away, and you hit it perfectly, because going out drinking, you straight away, you see those consequences. But you go through those 6 ripple effects, and at that Friday, you're pulling your hair out going, I need that again because it's been a rough week. Well, I wonder why it's been a rough week.
You're pretty much writing off like so many days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's a huge takeaway, and I really think there's obviously 2 parts to it all, but if you can understand or focus in or take time to pull apart the consequences, right, then obviously that makes it a bit easier to start putting a strategy into working around it. But you can't do anything unless you don't know what you don't know. And at the end of the day, a lot of young people just chase that quick satisfaction turnaround rate. And with what I was referencing before, they get stuck in that cycle, but they don't take the time to consider the consequences of, well, why are they chasing that short satisfaction in the first place? Because if you loved what you were doing every day, if you were doing the things that you enjoyed, you were at peace with it, and you were at peace with who you are, then you shouldn't really need to chase short satisfaction. There should just be a long-term plan for lasting satisfaction. And that's something that I think flies over everyone's head.
Yeah, like lasting satisfaction, I talk about it in terms of, I might have actually said this, I might be repeating myself, but when I talk to my friends about this who are struggling with this, I talk about it in terms of there's a slow burning fire, which doesn't burn as bright, but the fuel is more secure and it burns for longer, versus the quick flare up, pyrotechnic show that is, that short term. So it's kind of, the analogy I use is when you watch a motivational video on YouTube or something. Yes, for the half an hour following it, your mind's on fire and you're just raw, like you're just super about life. You're gonna go tackle it. You're gonna go get what you want. You're gonna get that bread. And then half an hour later, as that adrenaline wears off and those endorphins go away, and you sink back into your normal state of consciousnness, you're just, and then you just get back on your phone, or you just go do something else, right?
Yeah.
And that's that grease fire. That's that quick little flare up. It's bright. It's big. It gets your attention. It's exciting, but ultimately, it's illusory because there's nothing behind it. It just as fast as it came, that's just as quick as it goes away. Whereas that slow burning fire, it's like the embers around a coal. It's when you're having campfire, that fire will go out pretty quick, but then by the time you wake up the next morning, those embers and the coals are still burning the night after. So it's those embers, those smaller flames, which perhaps aren't as spectacular, aren't as sexy, aren't as bombastic as that quick thing, but it's more dependable. And if you can find that in your life, that consistent stream of motivation, which doesn't have to be so huge, but it just has to be enough to give you that motivation. Be like, let's just get out of bed. Let's go actually try something. Let's just do something. And it's not a lot because it is that smaller thing, but it's consistent, and that's the key. It's consistent over a long period of time. And once you find that, then that's when you can expand your vision into the long game. It's not about the short game anymore, because you're not looking for those quick, sexy little things. It's about, all right, well, what's this longer? Yes, it's a little bit more stale. It's not as enticing, but it's more dependable. And ultimately, if you're wanting to play that long-term game and achieve that long-term wealth, that's what you need. You need that. Why are you laughing, you cheeky boy?
I need a fire extinguisher shot. What you're saying is just hot. So I want to direct exactly that to you, Hendry. So what Ali's hitting it, he's spinning these flames and he's hitting it perfectly. So you touched on it spot on, which was find out that ember, right? So it's that consistent flame. So for you, Hendry, what's the consequences of you, because you obviously do a lot, right? You're in a lot of businesses, you work a lot, you're a workhorse. So what do you see as, and keeping it on the top of consequences, but making it referencing what Ali was just talking about, the embers, that motivation. You want that slow, consistent burn instead of just a flame that goes away as quick as it comes. So for you, I think you're driven a lot by certain consequences, and that's why you push yourself and apply yourself as hard as you do. So what, especially when Ali was just talking about it, because that's why I was laughing and smiling, because I could relate straight away to exactly what you were talking about. What was your interpretation of all of that in terms of, again, consequences and how that operates in your life?
I agree, but then I also see a different part to it as well. So like I majorly see like what you're saying, like I definitely agree with that, but I also see like there's also like a benefit from like that like short term kind of motivation as well. So like for me, I have that long term motivation, and it's not a monetary value, it's not I don't know, it's not something like physical or anything. It's something that's like I can do to help others out. It's not necessarily for me, and that's like my goal, like something that I'm chasing. But I also find that like from that short-term goal, it can also lead to a long-term goal. That's what I see sometimes. Like it's not always the case. Like you watch that motivational video and you're like, like you said, you're super pumped up for like half an hour. But like if you can notice that you're only pumped up for half an hour, I feel like you can then kind of like ripple onto that kind of like ember burning. That's what you're saying. Like a lot of people will just watch a motivational video or watch something, they'll be like super motivated for a little bit, then they'll slowly go back to what they're doing. But I feel like there's also like that percentage of people that will watch that and they'll be like, all right, this impacted me for this amount of time. What should I do to get that to last for my whole lifeline?
Well, it relates directly with these consequences, because if you have the vision, you want, because the vision's that long term. Like that's why I was bringing it up to you, because I know how hard you work, and like you said, you're not really doing it for yourself, or you're not doing it for anything physical, right? But for yourself, Andrew, you understand the consequences of you not working as hard as you are working, and you have a vision of how you want your life to look, how you want your family's life to look, and that's why. Personally, for me, knowing you, I think that's again why you can go so hard, because you have that vision. So that vision itself is the embers, it's the long game, it's the fire that won't be put out just overnight. And I think that's so important, because understanding that, or understanding the consequences of you not operating at 120%, of you sleeping in, understanding the consequences of you going for that pizza, understanding the big vision of it all, and the vision you want your life to be, and you want your family's life, your friends' life, people around you, whatever that core motivation is. Knowing that is what allows you to not lose that fire after a 30-minute motivational video, in my opinion.
Sometimes though, you have to go through an event for you to then find that motivation. Whether it's like, a really significant event in your life, or like an event that just kind of had a play on you, but isn't as significant as the other one. Like, I can't remember the quote, but it's like, sometimes you have to go through bad times to then notice the good times. But like during those bad times, you kind of realize, I don't want this, I don't want to live this life. And eventually you'll be like, well, and eventually when you get out, you'll be like, all right, well, I don't want to go back there. So I'm going to just use that as my fire, as my ember, to kind of keep moving on in life, to keep doing a difference,
Or saying past that first wall. So it relates directly with those examples where you could hit bad times or you could hit bad days, but what comes after that is the most important part to it all.
Yeah, and ultimately those bad events or whatever wakes you up for that minute, ultimately what it's doing is giving you perspective, because it's shaking you up in your life. It's breaking that routine, it's breaking that mindset, and for that split moment, or however long that, if it is like a truly significant event, then it'll carry with you for the rest of your life. But I guess they do have a certain power in that they can give you that wake up call. It can give you that chance to reevaluate and be more aware of, okay, well, what's valuable in my life, what actually matters, and what's worth my time.
With that perspective, so, and I see it all the time, you got, and we probably bash on it a bit on these podcasts, but just the big one where I think of consequence is that the whole consequence of the mediocre, pretty much. We've again referenced it on plenty of podcasts, but all these individuals who don't give it their best, all these people who don't wake up at a certain time, or maybe go to a job that they don't enjoy, or do a job half-assed, or they have trouble committing to something because they get revved up at the start. They'll jump on what's cool, what's popular. They'll start jumping out there buying Bitcoin, and then they're doing this and that. And all of a sudden, every single time they tackle a task, it's done with mediocre effort, mediocre strategy, and just, I think all of that plays a huge part on how we're all operating as a society itself. And the consequences of that, for me personally, they're huge. I look at how people operate, and I compare it, of course, to myself, but the way I view it is I need to operate a certain way to avoid being like that, because I see what that turns out to be. A big driving force for me is the way that I operate is I understand the consequences of what happens when I don't operate like that. If I don't hit the certain vision that I'm after, or the certain lifestyle I'm after, what does that mean for the people around me? So if I don't operate at a certain caliber, I know that I might not be able to help out my family or my friends or certain people who do rely on me. And a real good example of that is people like to, again, operate in that mediocre lifestyle, right? They like to just treat their job as, well, it's just a job. It's a means to get paid. So they go to their job every single day. They don't give it 100%. And then a family member is struck with an illness. So now that individual will then try to operate at a higher rate, right? They'll then need to do the overtimes, maybe to pay off some medical bills. But my question that always sticks out to me goes, well, why weren't you always operating with that mentality? Because consequences all around us. Your family member could get sick, you could lose a parent, you could lose a child. These are all realities that happen every single day. So why don't you stay ready? Because if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I always see that playing a big part to these consequences, because maybe that individual now wants to apply themselves because he needs it, but maybe he can't get overtime because he never worked overtime a day in his life. Maybe that job goes through a change and they have to let people go, and this one individual operated at 80% his entire career. So he is let go, and now his wife is sick, his child is sick, and he can't then provide for that family. And that's the consequence that is a real heavy motivator for me, because like I can't see that. For me, I'll always operate as hard as I can go, because I understand consequences. We're honestly one day away from being the worst day of our life. And yeah, we're one day away from it being the best day of our life. But if you wake up every single day understanding both those perspectives, then operate at a certain caliber to combat those realities that you may face.
Yeah, there's a quote that sticks with me. I think about it a lot because I am kind of haunted by that same obsession that you're talking about. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson, which he was an American poet, and it goes, God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. So I'm not religious myself, so the religious aspect of it doesn't apply to me, but just what that quote is suggesting in its entirety, even if you have a secular approach to it, it's saying that if you're a coward, if you're not applying yourself, then the potential that God has given you won't even manifest. So you're not even achieving what you're capable of achieving. You're just subpar, and that there's like a certain cowardice to that. And I agree with that so much, because even if you take away that religious connotation, if you're born with a certain potential, biological, or your parents have set you up in a certain way that you've received an education, a good education, a Western education, you just live in the Western world or in the first world country, or you have just so much resource and opportunity, the level at which you can operate is so much higher than the level at which we do. And to me, it's an obsession to know where is that limit? How hard can I push myself? Because the consequence for me is, well, anything less than that is me not achieving my potential, and that's what haunts me. I think if I did anything less than my potential, I would have so many regrets if I were to die. But if I lived my life at my potential and I was constantly seeking that level, if I was making my whole entire ability manifest, I was doing as much as I could possibly do, then even if that didn't amount to a whole lot, even if that just meant I lived a mediocre life, knowing that I was giving everything just to achieve that would be satisfactory to me. That I would just live a happy, normal life then. But what you'll find is that you can go so much far beyond that. But as you're saying, usually you wait until you have to rise above until you do. But why wait to rise above when, like, isn't that enticing to you? Isn't that just so seductive, knowing that, I could be twice the man I am right now? Like, how does that not just haunt you every night you go to bed? Like, how does that not freak you out that you could be so much more than who you are, but you're not achieving that? Like, that would just haunt me to my grave. And I don't understand how people can. I'm not saying I am at my peak. I'm far from it. I'm still pursuing that every day of my life, but I find it difficult to understand how people can be content not with that pursuit, not having that obsession, because how I don't know. It's like it's like it's incomprehensible to me. It's there's just so much out there for you to do, but just to not even realize it. It's like, someone gave you $1 million and you just spent $1 and just went, that's all I had in my bank account, but you had so much more.
I think it's like just speaking of what you're talking about, it's people don't see the perspective because they're comfortable in what they're doing. You go to a 9 to 5 job, you're working 5 days a week, you get a set pay, and everyone just sees that. That's like, oh, that's my vision. They don't see the other perspective, like, oh, I'm working this many hours, I'm losing this much time with my family, I'm losing this much time with friends potentially, I'm losing, money that I can even make, like the broader picture of it. Like, because they're just too focused on, well, I gotta do this because I gotta keep going in life, I gotta keep surviving, I gotta, keep kind of doing the minimum that I can keep doing. But it's like what you say, when an event like that happens, that's when they see the broader picture, and it's because that's a wake-up call from what it shocks them out of what they're doing. It then brings fear into what they're doing. People then become scared. They're like, all right, well, if I keep doing this, I'm gonna, I might, who knows what could happen in the future. So then they start doing more, and it's never too late to start doing more, but you could have been doing more later on, like earlier on. Like I'm pretty sure, I assume it's all comfort. People find comfort in what they're doing.
It is, and what you're saying, the fear then shocks them out, right? So they're so comfortable with the routine, they're so comfortable with the structure, so they think as long as they keep doing exactly, and you perfectly put it, the bare minimum, it's going to be fine. If I can pay off my mortgage, if I can pay off my bills, if I can send my kids to school, if I can do this uni degree and pay off my debt, then I'm ticking these boxes, right? So it should be fine.
It's like, oh, I'm achieving these goals.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's how it sits. And then they're in that comfortability. They say, this is everything that I need to actually achieve. I'm achieving them, so I'm doing great. Am I not? Am I not doing everything that I'm supposed to do? But the challenge is you're one bad day away from that crumbling, and stay at that mindset. And I've said it a few times in some speeches I've done in like leadership through my work, and that's life doesn't wait for you to armor up, and that's the whole idea on, again, stay ready. You don't have to get ready, because sooner or later something's going to hit you. But if you've done the active work, if you've done the extra work, if you've found the gaps and eliminated them, then you're going to be in a much better position. Because the harsh reality is, and it is a harsh reality, if you then decide to act once the fear hits you, because you understand the perspective, you understand the bigger picture, you can see beyond that first wall, then it might be too late. Because some sickness that a family member might get, they might need hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands up front. And let's use that overtime for an example. If you weren't actively investing in a broader picture for yourself or pursuing these strides that are so much beyond your bare minimum, which you again might be thinking your bare minimum is you're ticking all the boxes. Like you have your checklist and you're physically doing them all, and you're doing them to a great ability, no doubt, but that might not be enough. And again, that haunts me a lot because I don't understand how someone can, I don't know, I just can't understand how someone can think like that, think that they can do some bare minimums or do everything actually, but not do the extra work. Because I know I wake up all the time knowing and living with it that today is going to be the worst day. So what have I done to make sure if something was to happen, my family would be fine? Or if these people were to lose their jobs, I had an avenue to help them out, or anything like that. Like I said, life isn't going to wait for you to armor up. No one taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, heads up, on this day, at this time, this event is going to happen into your life. You got to do all the prep work. And the harsh reality is, sure, you can start once that fear hits you, but my personal opinion, and I might just be looking at it at a negative light, but I see that as that's far too late and you've probably missed your boat. And sure, you might be able to, it might not all be able to implode, you might be able to save some pieces, you might be able to save some people, but chances are you're not going to be able to save everyone and all of it at the end, because you haven't done that extra work. You haven't understood the consequences and put those barriers up. You haven't put the armor on. You haven't stayed ready, so you never had to run around like a headless chook and try to get ready once it all starts coming down on you.
So much of it is that addiction to the comfort, because ultimately, if you think about it, what does comfort actually feel like? It's all just, comfort is, most of it's just a physical sensation. So it's having a roof over your head, having a full stomach, being sheltered from the cold, having like your basic emotional needs met. And honestly, that's if you're blessed enough to live in the Western world and to live in a first world country in an advanced society, that's not hard to achieve. If you did bare minimum, if you just showed up to life, if you just showed up to your day, you could achieve the bare minimum. Like, it's not hard. Every one of us can achieve the bare minimum of achieving, food to put on your, and of course that's not to discount people who have undergone some sort of tragedy and end up homeless or something like that. I'm not saying that, but for the vast majority of us who don't, just get sidewinded by some freak incident, if you just show up to life, you can have your comfort needs met. But all that is just like your evolutionary prerogative to just, that's all that you needed to do way back when. Yes, all you had to do was feed your belly, feed your family's stomach, live in a house, or have some sort of shelter from the elements and protect them, and then that's it. That's all you had to do. And as long as you're making more babies, like, you're doing great. So like that's all like the evolutionary cycle cared about. But we've transcended that a bit. So it's not, comfort isn't enough anymore. You have to pursue freedom, and freedom and comfort are almost two complete different things. Because if you want to be free, you kind of have to live with not doubt, but there's a certain insecurity to freedom, and that security is what makes you comfort. Insecurity is what makes you free, because then, yes, it's good to make sure that you still have those basic needs met, but then why stop there? If you want to go beyond, if you want to become more than that, transcend that basic ability of yours to actually, go out there and achieve a greater sense of well-being or a greater wealth, whether that be, a monetary wealth or just some greater sense of well-being for you and your family. It's about knowing, comfort at that point isn't enough, because comfort is that mediocrity. Comfort is just what's normal. And for sure, a lot of people might just be fine with that, and that's fine. There's so many people out there who just don't want to be entrepreneurs. They don't want to be, have six packs. They don't want to have all these other things, and that's fine. If you're that person who's out there who just wants those basic needs met, and then they can live a happy life, and you're self-aware and you know that that's what you actually want, then like, good for you. You've already won the game. Like, that's you done. Like, good job. But then if you're that other type of person out there who that's just not enough, and there is that hunger inside you, well then that's when you know that level of comfort is just not going to be enough. But there's a lot of people out there who could be more, but are just settling for that comfortable level without, you know, actually pursuing that greater thing that they could be, which, you know, ultimately is what will lead to regret, or lead to, as we were saying, Luke, that haunting notion of not truly being what you could have been.
Everyone has potential. Like, everyone has potential to do things, but no one really, like I'd say majority of people don't realize that, you know. They, like you said, they don't have the perspective, so they just kind of cruise along. But then you have the people that have the hunger. But I think what it also takes is, if you were to, I don't know, well, I think that helped me like so much when I was younger, like in terms of perspective, was actually visiting another country like a third world country, for example. Seeing how they're living over there, how hard they're working, you know, they're chasing their goals to have a better life. It's like, over here we're truly blessed to have all these things, but like, it's crazy. You can learn so much from like being overseas and like seeing how they're working, how they're like putting their like time and effort into building a better life for their kids or even for themselves. But like, you can learn so much from that and bring it over here and implement it into your life.
Yeah, well, it's such a perspective change, because then you understand how easy is probably not the right word, but how, again, comfortable, like, you have it. It's, again, and you hit it perfectly, and I don't doubt there's plenty of people out there who are struggling, and I understand that, because I know when I was growing up, it wasn't all sunshines and rainbows, but I could still understand how easy it is to, you just have more options to secure yourself. You have more options to be comfortable in a place like Australia, or even Western culture, majority of them. And that's why that traveling is, because when you travel, it's not like, when you travel, it's a fact that you're getting the perspective change, that you're seeing these people, you're seeing their entire environment, you see all these obstacles that they have that we don't have over here, or that you never had when you grew up. And that's not to say that you didn't have struggles, Hendry. It's to say there's certain, the way it's structured, it's more comfortable, it's more cushiony, because again, it's a first world for a reason, and that's a third world for a reason. But with that perspective change, that's when it comes that clarity. And again, it's stepping away from, it's sitting up from the seat, looking at the board and understanding the consequences, because the consequences there are very real, and there are consequences here. But what are our consequences here? Our consequences are, we're not acting to our fullest potential, and that's haunting us. We're not working that extra overtime, or we're not doing that. Like, that's all fine. They're consequences which will lead to other things. If you see past that first wall, you'll see all these other consequences, right? But the consequences over there are a lot different to the ones here. And it's just more, these are ones that we can control. Over there might be war in that country, and there's not so much one individual can do about that, but that's just that perspective of, where there are two different consequences. Now, you leave from that experience and go, well, hang on, am I really going to let the wrong decisions or the consequences of just me not getting up early, me not working as hard as I could, is that really what I'm going to care about after I've just seen these individuals struggle through some serious stuff that they may or may not have any control over? But I can control when I get up. I can control how hard I go at work. I can control how well I treat my missus, my boyfriend. I can control all of that. So why do I spend my entire life just not actually doing it? And what you mentioned, Ali, you were talking about how if you are happy and content with ticking those boxes and living within those means, or you have that checklist, I need to feed myself, I need to feed my family, I need to do that, then again, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't want people to listen thinking I disagree with that. But I do challenge those individuals to consider all the consequences. Because if you're trying to feed your family and you're okay with doing the mediocre, then I know from my experience, I understand stuff happens like that, and all of a sudden you're then broke. All of a sudden you can't feed your family. All of a sudden you then have to board your house out, and strangers have to live with you. All of a sudden you then have to take up 3 jobs to just get food on the table, to pay off the bills, to get running water. And I'll just challenge those individuals, because 100%, if you're fine with doing the means, if you're like some people don't even have passions or have an ideal career, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because there's so much, humans are just so unique, right? You can be content with just working at a farm or living on a farm, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can be content living in the city. They're two different people, right? Two different perspectives, and they're nowhere near, like, you reverse them and they would both be unhappy. So there's never one answer, but it's just whoever those two individuals are, and they're ticking their check boxes and they're saying, this is what I need to do to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, consider the flow-on effect. Consider consequences that you can't control. And if you can't control the market crashing, it's happy days, but you can control getting up, you can control working that extra, putting that extra armor on around your family, because when adversity hits and when something happens, you will then be able to act on it. But I just don't want people to hear that message and think, well, that's me, I'm happy to just feed my family and do my mediocre job. Like, that's fine. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying when that gets taken away, and all things do end. So what have you done to keep up that lifestyle, if that's your lifestyle? Thanks for tuning in to the Prometheus podcast, where we aim to bring the fire back to the people.